Okay, good luck, everybody. Shavua Tov. So this is a class that we started in the summer. We've been giving it every Shabbos, and you can't really record anything on Shabbos, but now that the sun sets early and Shabbos ends earlier, I decided to start giving this again, hopefully every Motzei Shabbos after Shabbos ends. The nature of this class is a halacha class usually. It's a in-depth analysis of Jewish law, usually to try to get to a conclusion of how to actually act in our day-to-day lives. The nature of this class is going to be a little more advanced than what other classes that are on our channel. So I'm not going to be translating every single thing. I'm just going to assume that you understand what the word means. If you need a translation, I can always translate, but I'm not going to be Englishanizing it as I usually do. Okay. So, I'm not going to tell you what we're going to talk about, but I'll just start talking and you'll figure it out. You might not walk away with conclusive information from this class, but hopefully you'll walk away with some clarity on certain things. Okay, so we're starting with a Gemara in Maseches Brachos, Daf Mem Beis Amud Aleph, page 42, side 1. Okay, very interesting Gemara. Yeah, so the Gemara says, Rav Yehuda hava osik le lebrei beirav Yehuda bar Chaviva. Rav Yehuda was busy preparing for a wedding. Aisul kamei pas haba bekisnin. They brought before him this thing called pas haba bekisnin, which I've seen the translation of bread that comes as dessert. Forget the translation. It's some sort of bread product. Okay. Ki also, when they brought it, Sham'inhu de kamavarche hamaitzi, they heard him making the blessing, the bracha hamaitzi on this product. Amar luhu, they said to him, the other sages who were there, Maitzitzi de kashamaina, dilma hamaitzi lechamina aretz kamavarchitu. They said, what is this tzitzi? What is the sound that we heard you say? This bracha that you said. Is it possible that you said hamaitzi lechamina aretz? Amrilei, they said the other sages were making the blessing of hamaitzi, and he said, what is this sound that you're making? Is it possible you're making the blessing of hamaitzi lechem min aretz? Amrilei, they said to him, yes, the Tanya, as we had learned, Rabbi Moina Omar Mishum Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Moina said in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, Pas haba bekisnin mavarchin Allah hamaitzi. This thing that we're going to keep referring to it as Pas haba bekisnin, and I'm specifically not translating because the translation doesn't really do justice to what it is, because it's going to get complicated. But not too complicated. Pas haba bekisnin, we make the bracha on it of hamaitzi. Va'amar Shmuel, and we have it was taught that Shmuel said halacha k'Rabbi Muna, that the halacha is like Rabbi Muna, that on pas haba bekisnin, the bread that's ba bekisnin, we make hamaitzi. Amar luhu, so Rav Yehuda said back to them, ein halacha k'Rabbi Muna itmar. You heard the teaching wrong. Shmuel didn't say that the halacha is like Rabbi Muna. He said the halacha is not like Rabbi Muna. In other words, on pas haba bekisnin, you don't make hamaitzi. Okay, that's the gist. Okay, and based on the Gemaras, the appropriate bracha on pas haba bekisnin is actually mezainis, not hamaitzi. Okay, what's the big question? What on earth is pas haba bekisnin? I gave a little translation, but we don't really know what it is yet. Okay, so for that, we're going to have to open up the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch, Erechaim, Siman Kuf Samaches, chapter 168. I'm on the wrong page for some reason. Yes, if Zion. The Shulchan Aruch is going to tell us 3 different opinions about what this thing is, Pas haba bekisnin. I'll just tell you the 3 opinions outside, then I'll read it inside. The 3 opinions are Rabbi Hananel, Rambam, the Rambam, and Rav Hai Goin. Okay? Rabbi Hananel holds that Pas haba bekisnin is a it's bread, basically. It's flour and water. It's a bread dough that before the dough is baked, you stuff it with sugar and sweets and nuts and just make it's a sweet treat, essentially what it is. And it's almost as if the bread part of it is like, happens to be there in a sense, but it's part of the food. He says on this is what the Gemara is referring to when it says that you make a mezainis on this, not hamaitzi. Okay, that's opinion number one. Opinion number two is the Rambam. The Rambam says it's pasan elisha be meperes or shemen or challah. Basically, it's dough that instead of using water, you use fruit juice or oil or milk, and you make the dough like that, and then you bake it. That is pasaba. That is pasaba b'kisnin. On such bread, the Rambam says you do not. It's not bread. You make a mezainis, not hamaitzi. You don't wash for it. You don't make hamaitzi, and you don't do the whole benching. Okay. The third opinion is the opinion of Rav Hagoyin. Rav Hagoyin says it's essentially a hard, dry, thin cracker, flour and water. This is what the Gemara is referring to when it says pasaba b'kisnin that you make a mezainis on. So let's see it inside. I wish I had copies. I give copies, but I didn't make copies. So the Shulchan Aruch says pasaba b'kisnin. Yeah, pasaba b'kisnin. Yesh mefarshim. Some explain. Pas she'osu kimin kisim. It's like bread that's made like pockets. Shemamalim oisam. You fill it. Dvash, sukkar, ve'agoizim, meshkedim, ve'tavlin. You fill it with honey or sugar or nuts and almonds, spices. Vehemani kroim riskulas to the alachasu. It's whatever the language is. He says this is what it's called in that language. That's opinion number one. Rabbeinu Chananel. V'yesh emrim. Some say. The some say is the Rambam. Shehi isa she'erev badvash shemen echolov v'mini tavlin ba'afah. This is a dough that you mixed it with honey or oil or milk or types of spices and you baked it. V'hushi yatam ta'areves ha'meiperes yatav nikar bis. The mechaber, the writer of the Shulchan Aruch, Rav Yosef Cairo, he qualifies this. He says it's not simply that it's mixed with instead of water, it's fruit juice, let's say, but also the taste of the fruit juice or the oil or whatever it is needs to be discernible in the food. When you take a bite, you those, like, you ever had those rolls, whatever, that taste like apple juice. So according to the Shulchan Aruch, that's what when it's supposed to taste like apple juice. They do it on purpose, I assume, so that it should be mezainis. Okay, the Ramah, who the Ashkenazim, us, we follow, pops in here and says v'yesh emrim shezeni krpas gomer. Some say that actually this, the way the Shulchan Aruch describes it, is actually considered full-fledged bread, and you actually need to make a hamaitzi on it and wash in the whole 9 yards. The Ramah says, he says, in order for it to become mezainis, it has the it's not just that it tastes like the thing that you added to the honey or the oil or whatever it is. It actually has to be a majority of that. Okay, the majority of the mixture needs to be he didn't say majority. He says it has to be a lot of spices or a lot of honey or types of sweets, whatever, to the extent that it's as if the honey is like the main thing in this bread. It like you take a bite out of it and you say it's honey. It's a honey bread, but it's not like bread that tastes like honey. It's honey that tastes like bread in a sense. Okay. The Shulchan Aruch brings the third opinion. Yesh mefarshim. This is the opinion of Rav Hagoyin. Shu pas. That pas haba b'kisnin is actually bread. It's flour and water. Bein metubeles, bein she'enu metubeles. Whether it has additions or spices or anything like that, whether it doesn't. Sha'osim oisom ke'ovim yeveshim. You make them like dry crackers, I guess. V'kaisis sinoisim, you chew them. V'henim anakroim biskunis. They're called. Let's translate this as biscuits. I don't know if it's accurate. What is the Shulchan Aruch rule? He brings 3 opinions. Which one is it? He says, "V'halacha kedivre kulam." The halacha follows every single one of these opinions. Meaning, shalakol elu hadvarim neisnim lehem dinim shaman b'pasaba b'kisnin. In other words, what he's essentially saying is that, and the Alter Rebbe will explain momentarily, that we make a mezainis in all 3. In other words, if you ask the first opinion, Rabbeinu Chananel, if you would ask him about the other 2 opinions, he would say, "Those? That's hamaitzi. You got to wash for that." And if you ask the Rambam, what about the first and the third opinion? He would say, those are hamaitzi. I would assume. And the third opinion, if you ask him, your crackers, they're mezainis. Yeah, they're mezainis. Okay, what about the other 2? Sure, hamaitzi. So, because the Gemara says this is what's mezainis. So we are lenient on this because it's a derabanan, it's a rabbinical thing, it's a brachas. So we go leniently and we rule that you say mezainis on all three. Okay. Let's see that inside in the Alter Rebbe, because as Chabad we follow the Alter Rebbe. But before I get there, though, who are these people? Rabbeinu Hananel, the Rambam, Rav Hagoin. So they're part of what the time period known as the Rishonim. The Rishonim are, so the Rambam actually, he lists in his introduction to his Mishnah Torah, a whole history of how the Torah developed from Har Sinai, from Hashem giving the Torah to us on Har Sinai, all the way down to the Gemara, to the Ravina and Ravashi. And he explains that after the Gemara was sealed, it was done, there came a period of the Gaonim, and then the period of the Rishonim. The Rishonim is like the Rambam and Rashi and Rabbeinu Hananel and the Rashba and others. And later on, a few generations later, we have the Achrenim, and then we have who's around today in the last few hundred years. So I actually had seen this a few days ago, and I wanted to share it because it's just the idea. What are these? This is the generation of the Rishonim. So this is from a Farbrengen from the Rebbe from 1966, Shabbos Parshas Bereshis. I thought it was very interesting. The Rebbe says, yeah, so the Rebbe says there's a certain type of sefer. It's called a Shalos Tshuvos. Okay, it's where people had asked questions to certain sages or rabbanim, and they replied with long answers explaining how to rule in this particular situation. So we have these from the Rishonim. We have Shalos Tshuvos of the Rambam. We have Shalos Tshuvos of the Rashba. We also have of later generations as well. The Rebbe says there's actually a big difference. You see, if you open up both types of Svarim, you'll see that the Shalos Tshuvos of the Rishonim, like for example the Rambam, they're short and to the point, more or less. The question is asked, the question is answered. Boom, right there. Whereas the later generations you go, closer to our time, the answers seem to be getting longer and longer and more elaborate and more all over the place. Why? The Rebbe says, it's explained, it's like an analogy of a person who's looking for an object in a room that's lit up versus a room that's dark. When you're looking for something in a dark room, you need to tap around and feel with your hands to find the thing that you're looking for. And you feel the edges of it, you feel, it has a bottom, has a side, it feels like a cup to me, right? In order to identify it. And if the thing that you're looking for and the thing that you're touching with your hands don't seem to match up, you continue looking, you're feeling with your hands. Until finally you find that thingamabob that you were looking for. The dugmas b'shalos shel achronim shetzarich lehisagia b'arich shagam tayad shemagil hamaskana shel hizatel leimotz pirch halah v'hesen lekach poiskas halacha b'shalos zu. So you find this in the later sages in their works that the question that comes to them and they analyze it based on this Gemara, based on that Gemara, based on this part of the Shulchan Aruch, based on this commentary, and they come to a conclusion and they realize, no, this is not the way to address it. And they try some other route and they go another route until they come to a conclusion that seems to hold weight on all ends. This is not the case by the Rishonim, the sages who are called the Rishonim, who are they were like angels. This is compared to a person who's standing in a room that's lit up like this one. You just need to know what you're looking for. That right when you look and you see the object, you know that's what you're looking for. I know what I'm looking for. There it is, right there, done. So the Rishonim, a question came their way, they knew the answer. They've studied the Gemara extensively, they understood it thoroughly and clearly, it was very clear to them. A question came their way, boom, they had an answer. And it was an accurate answer. It was very clear to the point. Okay, so we have the three opinions of Rabbeinu Hananel, the Rambam, and Rav Hagoin, what this Pas Chabad of Erie is. Now, the Alter Rebbe in his Shulchan Aruch, same Siman Kuf Samach Ches 168, which is Hilchos B'tzias HaPas, the laws of breaking bread. He brings all three opinions at length, as is the style of the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch, to not just bring the halachas, but also to explain them, which is very unique. And he brings all three opinions, including the third opinion of Rav Hai Goin. Okay, this is in Siman Kuf Samaches, Seif Yud Beis, law number 12. I'll just read it inside. V'yesh mefarshim, there are those who explain. Shepas haba bekisnin, he pasuni lo shafilu b'mayim, that this pas haba bekisnin is a bread, it's a bread product that is needed even with water. Even if it has no spices, it's not stuffed with anything. You make it into like dry crackers. And you chew it just as for taste. You don't eat it as something to satiate you. You don't eat it as a meal. Well, the Indian halacha, how do we rule practically? We just brought three different opinions. Since this is a rabbinic thing, this is midrabanan, the brachis, to make brachis. So we rule leniently. That's the rule. When it comes to a rabbinic thing, we rule leniently when there's a doubt. Okay, we're not getting into that. Okay, fine. Okay, so far so good. We understand there's three opinions. Rabbi Hanano, it's stuffed bread with sweet stuff, and it's mainly, you're focusing on the sweet. That's really what it's about. Like a hamantash is a good example, but a hamantash is not usually made of, the bready part is not usually made of flour and water. Then you have Rabbi Hanano who says that the Rambam who says that it's a dough that's either instead of water using fruit juice or something, or it's, okay, leave it at that. And then you have Rav Hai Goin that it's a thin, dry cracker made of flour and water, but it's not meant to be, you don't like make a meal out of this thing. Now, as Chabadniks, we run into a slight issue when we open up the Seder Birchas Hananin. Okay, the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. Okay, we have most of it, or most of it. We have a lot of it because a lot of it was lost or burnt. But after the Alter Rebbe wrote his Shulchan Aruch, he also wrote something called Seder Birchas Hananin. It's a guide on the halachis of brachis. Of brachas for food. It's a relatively short book. As you can see, it's much thinner than that one. But he wrote much later. Okay? It's like a practical guide. Boom, this is what you do. The issue is the Alter Rebbe talks about this topic, this pas haba bekisnin in Perek Beis. He brings pas haba bekisnin. Some say it's a dough that's mixed with milk or butter or honey or oil or wine, or other fruit juices. And those who argue, which the other argue is the Rabbi Hanano, and say that thing that you just referred to is actually a maitzi, and the only thing that's the mezainis, the pas haba bekisnin, is actually something that's stuffed with sugar or with a chocolate or whatever it is. And that's like the main thing. And the Alter Rebbe rules of lenient halacha that regarding these things, you should basically we rule leniently to say mezainis, but a bal nefesh, someone who's extremely careful, should be more strict and only eat and not eat these things, whatever the things he's referring to as we're talking about a specific thing. Don't get caught up in this. You should not eat these things without washing the hands and saying hamaitzi. Sorry, instead you should make hamaitzi on something that's straight up hamaitzi, like a loaf of bread, and then eat these things as part of the meal. Fine, but don't get lost on that. The main issue is that the Alter Rebbe, in his Seder Birchas Hananin, which is written later, the Alter Rebbe does not mention the third opinion. Out the window, gone, disappeared. We have the Rabbeinu Hanano, thing that's stuffed with sweets. We have Rambam, that the dough is the mixture of the dough is fruit juice or whatever, and Rav Hai Goin, his opinion that it's like a dry cracker, that's mezainis, is not mentioned at all by the Alter Rebbe in the Seder Birchas Hananin. What do you do with this information? Does that mean that the Alter Rebbe retracted this opinion, that he's not ruling like this? In other words, that on such a cracker you would actually make hamaitzi because it's flour and water? Or does it mean something else? Does it mean that he just didn't mention it, but it says in Shulchan Aruch that you make mezainis on this? I will point out that I found also in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, which has been accepted by Jewry worldwide, in Siman Memches, Kitzur Shulchan Aruch also brings the first opinion, the second opinion, and he drops the third opinion. Doesn't mention it. Very interesting.
Rabbi, I just wanted to ask.
Yeah.
I just noticed now that on Pesach we make hamotzi on the matzah, but then the second, the holiday's over, it reverts to being mizonot, even though the ingredients stayed the same the entire time.
So we'll talk about that in a minute. It's a good question. So how do you look at this? So it's up to, actually, in other words, we'll get. Let's just read this inside. I don't want to start saying things without confuse already. We have a sefer called Kseis HaShulchan. Kseis HaShulchan was written by Lubavitcher Rav in Eretz Yisrael. His name Rav Chaim Noah. He was a very famous Rav. Lived around 100 years ago. I have a book about him on the shelf, actually. Oh, yeah, it's still there. So he basically took the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, a lot of it, and he made it into a very easy-to-use form, in a sense. And he has notes. So on the bottom here, he writes, ובסימן קס"ס י"ב הביא השיימנו שאפילו מנולש במים ואין מטובלס על שעיצם מייסה אוגוס יבשס קויסנס לתיאב ולא כדי להסביע ברכות במרזנס. He says that in Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch he brings the third opinion of Rav Hai Gaon, that even if it's kneaded with water, it's not spiced, it's not filled with anything, it's just dry crackers, the bracha is mezainis, upasak lahalacha lahaka b'divrsekim k'dezu, and he ruled that practically the halacha that we follow, we go leniently regarding this with these different opinions, and we make a mezainis in this. V'kach pasku kol achreim, and all the later sages ruled the same way. Ubesider hishmit de'azu legarmi. The Kseis HaShulchan is probably the first one to point this out. In the Siddur, which the Seder Berachas Hananin of the Alter Rebbe was written in the Siddur, the Alter Rebbe Siddur. In the Siddur, the Alter Rebbe deleted this opinion. He didn't mention it. Mashma she'ein daite lahakol klal bazeh. It's implied, the fact that he didn't bring this opinion, it means that he actually he's ruling that you should not be lenient on this at all. He says, "Veluli de mistafina amina shim asu gisiveshes b'tei chalisha irvu gam tavlin me peres b'oifin shnegish tavlin afishin reiv negat hamayim b'zeish lahakol gam ladas amor b'sider kim das b'beitzes b'shulchan aruch shim negish tam tavlin have pas kiznin b'tzir feishem l'shul." Okay, fine. The main point I want to get to, okay, you have a certain type of cracker that exists. There's different forms of it. And there's a company, Osam, that makes crackers, these little ovals. Look at the ingredients. 2 basic ingredients, more or less. Flour and water. What bracha are these crackers? If you look on the box, it says mezenis. Usually, it says what bracha is. Why? Because they're ruling based on the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch says that this is the third opinion of Rav Hai Gaon. It's mezenis. For Lubavitcher, what's the bracha? Alter Rebbe is the third opinion of the Shulchan Aruch, but in the Seder Berachas Hananin, it doesn't mention it. So, the Kseis HaShulchan, we just mentioned, if you would ask him, seemingly he would tell you that it's Hamaitzi. The Alter Rebbe is ruling, he retracted the opinion, he said that we can't be lenient on this opinion. We have to rule more stringently, you have to wash and say Hamaitzi. So this is actually and there's also wasa crackers, right? This is actually a bit of a debate amongst Chabad Rabbanim today, from my understanding. What bracha you make on such things, based on this omission from the Seder Berachas Hananin. So some will say you make hamaitzi. Alter Rebbe pulled the opinion out. That means he's being more stringent on it. He's not ruling like this. There are those who say to make mezainis. Based on what? They say the Seder Berachas Hananin is written in the Siddur. It's written as a practical guide. It's very, it's written for the common man. The common man in times of the Alter Rebbe, they didn't have these kind of crackers. They just weren't around. Nobody made crackers that were like thin, dry, flour and water crackers. So since it's not relevant information because nobody's eating these things, the Alter Rebbe didn't bring it. But of course he still holds of it. He brought it in the Shulchan Aruch, make him a zenis. So that'd be a similar question, right? So different things are said. I saw today also that okay, before I get there, I want to stop the recording before I get there, but just one last thing over here is the Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan is a very important halachic work written past 300 years. Where is it? I was trying to understand what reason would there be to retract the third opinion. Why would you? What reason? You see in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch as well, he didn't bring the third opinion. What would be difficult? What would be a difficulty with that opinion that we wouldn't rule leniently on it? So I saw it's very interesting. He writes regarding the third opinion of Rav Hagoyin. Yeah, Shadukasa be mitubeles in mitubeles. Rabbeinu Beis Yosef Kosve Dei Shlishis is El Shene. He says that the Beis Yosef, the Mechaber, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, he brings it as a third opinion. He says V'yesh Mishvarshim Shu Pas Ben Mitubeles V'chol Shayim Beisim Kachim Yiveshim V'chaysin Neisam V'hem Nekreim Biskunis V'chol. He quotes the Shulchan Aruch. He says V'einem moving klal. This is not understood at all. This third opinion. The Kivan Sheim Bei Tavlin, since it has no spices, no additions, it's literally just flour and water. Harehu Pas Gomer. It's absolute 100% bread. The otomi pneishahu yavish in a pas, just simply because it's dry and it's crunchy, it's not bread, really. I don't know how to understand this. So he takes issue with the understanding of this opinion. Rav Hagoyin was a great sage, lived even before the Rambam, if I'm not mistaken. But he has trouble understanding this opinion. I don't know why. I can't say for sure why the Alter Rebbe left it out of the Seder Berachos Hanenin. But I just wanted to share this to provide clarity on the topic, even though you are walking away without a conclusive "what do I do?" And I wish you all a good vach, and thank you for listening.